Well, hello. I am Whitney, and this is Olivia, and we are
Hello.
women in STEM.
Yes. Everyone, welcome. We have just joined this call. We're fresh and ready to go. We are not wasting any time. Today, STEM stands for should they?
Eek,
Monsters! Nice.
Yeah.
And and we'll tell you why. Today we're going to be talking about
Jurassic
Park. One of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, it's it's one of my favorites, which makes me feel kind of basic when I tell that to like film people. But Jurassic Park, I feel like, is one of the ones, not that the other ones don't, but Jurassic Park really deserves all of the acclaim and the notoriety that it has received over the years. It is truly one of the most fun movies to watch, even still. It's so well made. The acting, the storyline is phenomenal, and Spielberg really, really, like, what am I saying here? He went above and beyond with it. He killed it.
I think it's a really quintessential Spielberg film. He's a very famous and acclaimed director for good reason, and we see that time and again in a lot of different films.
Spielberg. Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Laser cats! Whoops, Steven.
But I feel like this one definitely shines.
Absolutely. You see in movies like Jaws, he works on building the suspense, and you have a lot of history that went into that film. And that was really like his first breakout piece, right? And I'll be honest, I don't really love Jaws. I find it kind of boring. It's really long, and there's not a ton of action. It's not one of my favorites. And I feel like with Jurassic Park, he's really mastered the art of building up suspense and with the perfect delivery, with the perfect payoff throughout the movie. We don't really see any dangerous dinosaurs for a good portion of the film. But by the time we get to it, it's like, oh, it's dinosaurs, baby. They're there. He really delivers. And I feel like that's a really good balance of having the build up and the suspense and then the payoff and the delivery. And the audience is just as scared as the characters in the movie are.
I agree. And I feel like taking that time to establish the world at first makes it definitely more threatening when everything kind of falls apart. But also I think it helps us as an audience have more empathy with these characters who've been so like Ellie and Alan, right, are this is awesome. This is my job because I love it, and they're so excited to do all this research and make all these discoveries and spend time with with each other and with the dinosaurs and with the kids and whatever. So we see from the beginning when they're flying onto the island, and then also for a good portion of the movie after that, the wonder of this creation and this scientific advancement and the progress and how really interesting and alluring it is. But we also have that line from Ian Malcolm right at the beginning that you're so preoccupied with thinking whether you can, you don't stop to think about whether you should, and we really see that come to fruition when the power goes out and suddenly these are dinosaurs that are dangerous and not just a cool science experiment.
And I think even with Ellie and Alan, we see that sentiment with them when they're sitting at the table for dinner, and all of them are saying, these are people that, like you said, are very passionate about this subject, very passionate about dinosaurs and paleontology, and they are also saying, this was a bad idea, you shouldn't do this. These creatures do not know what century they're in. They don't know how to live. You didn't put the time in.
And they're wild animals anyway.
Exactly. And I think that Ellie especially has a really good point. She's like, you have all of these plants that you know nothing about. You picked them because they look good. But, some of them are poisonous. Some of them are causing, problems with the animals. You have no idea. You're mixing all of these creations together like a reckless child without actually thinking about the consequences or doing any proper research. Why didn't they consult her prior to so she could say, these plants are poisonous, these ones look good, and they're harmless,
right?
I think that line really shows the reckless abandon that they moved forward with this project. They didn't really care if they were doing what they were doing responsibly.
Right.
Because I think done well, that would have been really, really powerful. But, you know, the combination of Jeff Goldblum and Ellie Sattler saying, you know, you were so concerned about whether or not you could, you didn't think about whether you should, and you didn't think about the how either. And
Right.
like, that's, I think, where the danger comes in, is not that it was done at all, but that it was done in such an irresponsible way.
Definitely. And we see that over and over with that character, right? That he's not only building an amusement park, like, with dinosaurs, which is crazy in itself. And again, he's not doing his research about, like, the kind of environment that's suitable for those animals that, like, obviously isn't, we don't know everything about it, but there are experts, such as Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
But he is also, like, he's bringing his grandkids along. That's crazy. Right. Like, for the first, like, an amusement park that's, like, has so many things that could go wrong. And this, like, team of scientists is there for, like, the initial research to see if it's even, like, viable to open as a real place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they haven't even done their, like, preliminary testing yet, and it's, therefore, definitely not a place for children.
Right.
But he's just, like, he's so excited to have this, like, big project, and he's gonna make so much money, and it's gonna, you know, it's gonna be awesome, and he's, like, such a great scientist and businessman and whatever, that he, like, can't think about the danger he's putting his kids in, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's an element, and this might be moving a little off topic too, but there might be an element of, like, technological criticism as well, because most of the problems in the park are caused by computer failure. You know, when the power goes out, the doors unlock, the electric fence goes out,
Right.
the Jeeps stop running. You know, there's no way that they can get away from the T-Rex enclosure because they're just trapped there. The Jeeps run on an electrical track. And, you know, a lot of the problems might have been, you know, not, obviously not the main ones, but, you know, a lot of the smaller problems could have been prevented by, you know, just having manual mechanisms rather than having everything run electronically.
Right. Everything fully automated, fully electric.
Fully automated,
yeah.
exactly. He kept saying we spared no expense. And he didn't spare any expense into having, like, the newest, the fanciest, like, the most, you know,
Right.
advanced, without thinking about, like, okay, does this actually work? You know, going back to what we're saying. Like, he just wanted
He's
something
not a
big and
pragmatic
flashy.
thinker at all. He's just,
Exactly.
Yeah,
He poured so much money and so much energy into this without thinking, like, about, like, okay, having an actual Jeep that runs with gas, perhaps that could be done, like, better with an actual tour guide rather than
Right.
just, like, run electronically, because then you can actually keep the car moving. You don't have to
Right.
be subjected to the whims of the electronic system, which is run, by the way, by one man.
He's completely consumed by his idea, right? In addition to, like, not thinking about the plants and not thinking about carnivorous beasts. Like, that's totally insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because all of this is addressed immediately, you know, and I really
Yeah.
like that you have these characters calmly sitting and discussing these problems before the actual problems come out, you know, like, and that's
'cause
it's
it's
such
not,
a
like... Yeah,
Well,
it
it's
shouldn't
not-
be a surprise that these things are happening.
exactly.
Of course they're
They
able
said
to
that
predict
would.
it.
And that is so telling, you know, that the wealthy white man who's just put everyone on this island in danger, including his own family, and
To
he
make a
refused
profit.
to make a
And
profit,
to be the leader, to be the idealist.
and you could even say that that wasn't his initial argument. You know, like, we have the lawyer in stark contrast who's like, you could charge whatever you want, and he's like, that's not what this is. He says that he wants to do this to bring wonder to people, to, like, you know, show what can be done with scientific advancement.
Right.
You know, you could even argue that money wasn't his main concern, although that is something that is criticized with the lawyer. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
he immediately was concerned about the...
Like, one of the number one people on his team is not the botanist and is not the ethicist. It's the lawyer.
It's
Who's
the
telling
lawyer
him how
who
much
was
money he can make.
he was already hesitant about it. He said, I'm going to be so critical, I'm going to be so harsh. I need to know about any insurance liabilities here. But then the second that the money tag was up, he lost all integrity. He's like, we're going to make a fortune. That was the first thing out of his mouth when he saw the dinosaurs. We're going to make a fortune. Rather than, the actual awe of the scientists and the people who love this subject. But even more than, oh gosh, what's his name? The little man in the white suit. The guy who made the dinosaurs.
Oh, the grandpa that we've been referring to, for several minutes.
How did we not said his name?
That's crazy.
I just realized I don't remember what he's called.
Dr. Hammond? Or just Hammond? Mr. Hammond? Yeah.
John Hammond. Yeah, that's it. There you go. Okay. Well, now I've lost my train of thought.
We're talking about how his initial, he's not, a fully, capitalist idealist. He wants to create wonder, but he, won't think, practically outside of that. And then you're talking about the lawyer who, immediately buckles when he sees how much money they can make.
For the idea of money. And I do think that's interesting that both sides are criticized. Hammond, he had good intentions. He had genuinely good intentions. And sometimes that just doesn't matter. Yeah,
I think we see that, all of these characters except for, basically except for one, have good intentions. But they just can't come to consensus, especially since Hammond, already went too far before having that conversation, right? So even though, like you said, we see them talking about, all the dangers of the park, of which there are, a trillion, right? Before the power goes out and they actually have to confront those. But it's not they've already been set up way before anybody got to the island. Because they already were making clones of dinosaurs and planting all these dangerous plants and building tracks without separate roads for the jeeps to go off. So I think, even going into something with good intentions, the right people and the right, how have to be there before you even start.
I mean, it is just breathtaking arrogance.
From the beginning. Because you think of how many, how many of these things could have been prevented if Malcolm and Ellie and Alan were there before they started all the, the DNA samples and, creating everything on the island. I don't know, just interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I do want to move ahead and say I think that's something interesting that we see contrasted with the Jurassic World movie. And I'm only referring to the first one. I'm not even going to acknowledge the other two. But
there aren't. There's only one Jurassic Park.
Two others.
Yay, and there's one Jurassic World. Boo.
I don't think they actually moved ahead with it, but yeah.
They probably learned from.
Yeah. What a phenomenal metaphor actually for what the original movie was.
Yeah, the wonder of this story. We're going to create tension and emotion and scientific interest, right? And then they're like, oh, what if we did it more for more money?
You never stop to think about whether or not you should.
Should.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, how interesting. Isn't it funny when, something, tells a story and then it's just, in the public eye, does exactly the same things that it was speaking against?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Funny,
It's sure
I
interesting.
can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head at the moment. Looking at you, Hunger Games. I'm looking at you.
Yeah. I can.
But I think specifically the first Jurassic World, I think unintentionally it did this. I think it works really well as an example of itself. Because in the first Jurassic Park movie, you have, these animals that are just kind of unintentionally thrust into this world. It's not their fault. And they're not framed as malicious. They're just framed as...
No, because they're just wild,
and that's
animals.
Exactly what they're supposed to be. They're just doing the only thing that they know to do. But I think you move into Jurassic World, and that isn't enough anymore. And I think that's... You see exactly where Jurassic Park was going in the first place. You know, it's been taken over completely by greed,
Right.
by, you know, the desire for more and better and bigger. And instead of creating just a normal wild animal, they create a genuine monster that is actively malicious. And it's just so fascinating to see, like, even still, like, out of the context of the movies itself, like, the original Jurassic Park movie was not enough anymore. It's not enough to just have wild animals and to only have them for the second half of the movie. We have to have them immediately. We have to have them right away. And we have to have them bigger and better. And they have to have them so they're...
And higher stakes every time. And they have to have this kind of gauntlet that they can put on and in a snap erase half of the world's population. Because that's the only thing that's dangerous enough. Instead of just like, oh, I don't know, we're on like a secluded island and there's only a few of us here, but it's still very high stakes. We all want to live. We want to save these children. And we want to know, like, the limits of what we can do and what we ought to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Should be enough. They're like, why? One of the main characters is a philosopher who wears all black.
They're like, I like that. He's going to be played by an
That's
elderly
boring.
man.
It's like, no, it's...
Like, I've got to...
It's
I've got a
awesome,
pitch for you,
actually.
man. What if he's played by young Jeff Goldblum, and at one point he's fully naked, okay? You just strip him down, and he's splaying like no man has ever splayed before, chest out.
It's like, ouch, my leg.
I'm horribly injured. Oh, I love that man. It should have just been done. Yeah. Phenomenal, like, unintentional insight. Yeah, very meta.
I don't know. This is just how I feel about every, like, not every reboot or remake or spin-off or sequel or prequel, but, like, many of them. You know what I mean? Just a lot of them are like this. Where you, like, have a really good movie and, like, people really like it.
Can I...
Because it's good, but then people see, oh, people really like this, but therefore we should make more of them. Instead of, like, people like this because it is good, therefore we should make more things that are
every last
good.
drop out of it. Right, yeah. We're gonna capitalize off of the brand.
Yeah, exactly. The name rather than the interesting things.
The name. Yeah, we're getting off track.
But it's
yeah,
kind
no.
of in the same vein that we were talking about, like, scientific progress versus
You can, but should
capitalistic
you?
progress versus, like, yeah, you should actually debate the ethics of it all. We can create carnivorous, like, dinosaurs and have them exist and people come and see them. But, like, should we do that, actually? Or should it be enough to say, like, wow, this is incredible scientific technology. Maybe there's another way we can use it that, like, doesn't put people's children in danger.
Yeah, maybe this should be in the hands of someone who's not just a rich white man who just decided one day that that's what he wanted to do.
Maybe we should be more responsible with this. Also, in the book, there's, like, a moment, they're on an island that isn't completely, like, that doesn't lack a population. There, like, is a people that live there. And
Interesting.
I haven't read it for a long time, so I don't remember the exact details, but there's, like, they have, like, the lab where they're creating the dinosaurs, and, like, one of them gets out and, like, attacks a native woman's, like, baby. And that's, like, in the beginning of the story, right? So you're already set up, like, these people these scientists are, like, creating these things without recognizing the danger that it poses to people's families.
Right.
And it makes sense that it, like, wasn't in the movie. Like, it's obviously a really great...
Well, they kind of had something similar. They start out with the guy getting attacked as they're trying to corral a raptor.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Like, immediately.
It's true. Like, basically, I don't know. It's just an interesting, like... And that's what makes me feel so strongly this theme of, like, parenthood, right? Not only, like... Not only does the question of, like, can versus should come into, like, technological advancement and all this stuff, but it for sure goes into, like, how you're treating people around you and especially how you're raising your children. So I thought it was having the context of the book made that clearer for me in the movie, but even in the movie, you can clearly see how irresponsible Hammond is with his grandchildren, and how Ellie and Alan,
Right.
like, have to adopt them in a way, you know, like, have to be their caregivers because their actual guardian, their actual caregiver is so distracted by his, like, ideals. And making sure
Right.
they think everything is cool. And they are, like, having fun instead of making sure, like, they're safe.
Right, which should be his number one priority. But it's just
Right.
not. He barely thinks
But it's just
about
not,
them.
because he has... Right, yeah, he has 15 other, like, high priority things that he has to do.
And you could see that he loves them.
Which, again, is, like, if it's before the park is opened and you're still, like, working out all these kinks and you have so much, like, research to do and things to maneuver, like, it's, again, weird timing to bring your grandkids.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could have everything done and already have had the conversations and made the necessary changes for, like, safety and whatever, and still invite them before it's open.
Right. But, like,
You know
as
what I
you're
mean?
doing
But they're
the
just
safety
there
check.
so early on. Yeah. Like, with your 10-year-old grandson? Like, are you sure? That's a child.
Yeah. Well, he knows about dinosaurs. He should be good.
Yeah, he loves dinosaurs because he's 10.
Right.
Like, name a kid that doesn't have their favorite dinosaur. It's not the same thing as, like, again, just, like, actually watching out for their well-being, which Ellie and Alan are really good at. And I love their dynamic, how, like, Ellie understands immediately that these are, like, children who needs to be taken care of, and you kind of see that that's how she's acting towards them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Alan, like, is really good with kids, but he doesn't think he is, and he doesn't think he wants to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? So instead, he doesn't, like, treat them really, like, cuddly.
Yeah.
He would never do that. He hates that.
No.
But he's not rude.
No, the only
He
time
just
that
is,
we
like,
see
kind of
him
uncomfortable. But I
rude
think, like,
to a child is right at the beginning, and when that kid's being a dick about this thing that he's
Right.
very passionate about. He's the raptors are stupid, and you're stupid. And he says, actually, I'm going to stick this claw up your gut, and I'm going to drink your intestines like spaghetti. And the kid's like... But, like...
which is like mean, but also kind of
Yeah,
funny.
it really
And
is.
it's part of what makes him, like, good with kids, you know, that he's not gonna say and do what they expect every adult to do.
Right. And, you know, he shows them respect when they're, you know... the first kid that we see is a brat. And I think that he kind of has his guard up a little bit, because that's just what he expects all kids to be, is just snot-nosed little brats who are, like, rude
Yeah.
and loud, and they smell funny, I think is what he says. And, you know, Alex and Tim are both, like, they're siblings. They're, you know, kind of argue a little bit with each other, but, you know, overall they're respectful, and Tim really admires Alan. He loves him. He read his book, you know, and he wants to talk about it. And I think that Alan has this idea of, you know, like, oh, this kid's gonna, like, you know, I don't want to deal with that. But then the second that they, you know, are put in mortal danger together, you know, Alan's willing to risk his own life for the safety of the children, and then immediately becomes softer, immediately shows, like, oh, okay, no, I'm going to take care of them. They care about these things. I'm going to care about the things that they care about, and I'm going to keep them safe. Mm-hmm. You know, he immediately becomes softer in his own way. Like, we see what he could be like, you know, like, on an outside perspective,
right.
It might not seem soft, but like you're saying, he expresses that differently than what other adults do. You know, he does the electric fence bit, and he makes Tim laugh, and you see that he gets a kick out of that, like, making that kid laugh, and he's surprised by it.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because
Absolutely.
he's the one who wants nothing at all to do with kids, but like you said, he's very good with them, and in unexpected ways.
Yeah. Which I think really a lot of people, just, like, generally in real life that we can observe being good with kids, it's because they, like, don't treat them the same as every other adult treats them. So we see that with, like, Ellie being, like, genuinely concerned for them, and being a little more present than maybe Hammond has been.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that with Alan just being, like, goofy and weird and, like, kind of cantankerous.
Yeah.
Like, kids love that.
One person that I wish we would have seen with the kids more is Ian Malcolm. Because it's...
A chaos theorist
Ooh.
head-to-head with a 10-year-old child. Yeah, good luck, dude.
Oh my gosh. It would have been amazing. It would have been phenomenal. Like, and it's funny because he says he loves kids. And he gets them. Which is interesting because we don't really see that put into practice very much beyond one scene. You know, they're in the car and Alan gets back in the Jeep after going to check on the other ones, and the first thing Ian asks is, how are the kids? And Alan's like, like, they're there. Why would I ask about the kids? And he's like, kids get scared. Like, you know, the power's out. It's raining. It's dark. Like, it's scary. And he has that thought, that moment of consideration. You know, he's not going to go out of his way to, you know, check on the kids, which I think is another thing that really is an interesting element of parenthood, that, you know, the kids are allowed their independence, even if in this situation maybe they shouldn't have been. You know, they're trusted within the narrative and without the narrative to stand as characters on their own, and as also like independent entities who are still children, you know, but they still have agency in the story. I don't know if that made much sense.
No, definitely. I think it's, just an observation about how much freedom they should be given to be, not only to be themselves, but to, like, go places or to, like, do things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Hammond is like, I don't know, do whatever you want, be yourself.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas I feel like the other adults are, like, not gonna stop them from, you know, doing the things that they like in terms of, like, being creative and learning about science and whatever. Like, they're very much allowed to be themselves in terms of their personality and their character, but they are a little more concerned about, again, their, like, physical well-being.
Right. Yeah.
Like, are they safe? Are they happy? Are they scared?
Are they stuck in a car
whatever?
in a tree?
Yeah.
Can I get them?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think something that's interesting too,
So
and
catchy.
I feel like this isn't an original thought, but I don't remember where I've gotten it. But it's interesting that Alan is the one who's taking care of the kids throughout the entire most of the film. It's him with kids, you know, struggling to make it back, whereas Ellie is, you know, off kind of being a.
You'd think it would be Ellie or Ian who have said that they
you
like
would think,
kids.
yeah, or specifically Ellie because she's a woman, like she has that, you know, feminine touch, but it's not. She's
really
off being a
nurturing.
badass.
She likes plants.
You know, she's off
Yeah.
going to turn the power back on. She's struggling her way through the jungle with the dude with the gun. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I really like that they set that up intentionally to be, you know, he's gonna be the one taking care of the kids. She's like, it's just kind of a fun little swap that you don't really see in a lot of films. And plus, she's the only woman in the movie. But they also don't draw attention to it either. And I love that because there is nothing in this. Yes, and it drives me crazy when they pat themselves on the back for it. They're like, look at that. She's a woman. Look at her. She's not with the kids. Didn't we do a good job? Like, there's no funny, self-aware quip about it. There's, like...
She's there because she's a scientist.
Yes! And it's just left at that.
Like, yeah. And I love that it kind of is subversive of a lot of our general expectations. But, yeah, like, not, like, in a girl bossy way, you know?
Yeah! Not in a Joss Whedon way.
My film teacher brought up last week Marvel, whichever movie it is, one of the Avengers probably, where they have, like, one of the women is, like, fighting or something, or, like, in danger,
Oh, and
so
she's
then,
like,
literally all the other women are, you know...
You're
why?
alone. And they go, she's not alone. And they have that moment. Yeah, where all of them, like, swarm up behind her. But they also pause.
Like, why couldn't it...
And pose.
If she, like, she's, like, battling and she's, like, in danger, it could be literally anybody. Like, in what world would all the women, like, see each other from miles away across this huge battlefield and be like, oh, we should all fight together. We should have, like, a women's battalion that's, like, separate. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
That's in Avengers Endgame.
And it's clearly just there. Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. No, that was...
And it's clearly, like, just there for, like, to pander to the audience.
Right.
And to look like they're doing something, like, really feminist and interesting.
Yeah. That was the scene where...
But it's completely not real, you know? So you're just like, it's not believable. Like,
CGI.
and I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel, like...
No.
Raised up as a woman. I feel annoyed.
That was the moment, I would say, like, the official moment where I gave up on Marvel. Watching that movie. Because I was like,
You're, like, on the edge. You're like, well, I'll give it a chance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And...
Yeah.
No more. I'm done. For that specific... Yeah. Like, you think I'm stupid enough to just be okay with that.
Another thing she brought up was, like, when people make these movies that are, like, featuring a strong female lead or whatever, and then they kind of bomb, people take it to mean that, like, well, you can't make movies
with
like
a strong
that.
female lead.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so she's talking about, like, people were kind of up in arms about, like, Wonder Woman or whatever, like, whether it be successful, and then they made, like, a third Batman versus Superman. She's like, nobody's asking if we're gonna stop making man movies. Right. There are so many terrible man movies, but if there's one, like a little bit too self-aware or, like, a little bit cheesy movie about a woman, we, like, can't have them anymore. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no.
And it's, again, they don't, like, poke fun at it that, like, uh-oh, Ellie's off being cool and Alan's gotta stay home with the kids. What's he gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, it's, both situations are, like, very high stakes. She's, like, crawling through the jungle. She's, like, turning on backup generators. She's putting her life on the line, right? And so is he. Right. Because he's saving children from car crashes and dinosaurs. Electric fences, exactly. Like, they're both doing incredibly difficult things. And just because they're not the things that you would stereotypically expect for a man and a woman to be doing, it's important that each of them is the one doing it, and that they don't bring any more attention to that than they have to.
I think,
like, he feels out of place taking care of the children because he's never done it before. But it's not like,
it's not because he's a man.
You know those, like, commercials where, like, dad forgot to get the whatever. It's not because he's a man. It's because he's a cantankerous scientist who hasn't had a lot of experience with children.
Right, absolutely.
Whereas Ellie is, like, struggling out in the jungle, like, trying to turn the power back on or whatever, and it's not, like, harder for her because she's a woman.
And
it's because it's an incredibly dangerous...
She's not wearing high heels! She's not! And there's not, like, a funny little self-aware moment where he's like, what, you're gonna wear that? And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna tie my blouse around my waist, because this is what, like, I can be a woman and be in the jungle. No one should wear high heels in the jungle!
But I'm also a woman. Yeah, no.
No! You're not wearing practical jungle attire! That's a perfectly valid criticism! Like, running from a T-Rex in high heels is not a great way to defend femininity, because that's a stupid idea! It's stupid! It's stupid. Ellie is wearing hiking boots for the whole damn movie, and she's legendary for it.
Like, of course she is, because, again, she's, like, you know, almost like a real person.
Yeah.
Who, like, is logical.
I've just had to take a moment to get my blood pressure back down.
You're good. Yeah. Another question of, like, maybe you can, but you should think about whether you should, is, like, yeah, running or fighting in high heels. Do you have to do that? No. Like, cool that you can, but you also can break your ankle.
Probably will.
Should you? Yeah.
No.
Are you more of a woman because you wear high heels? And then that's, again, like, just kind of perpetuates a lot of, like, you can be a strong female character, but only if you're distinctly, like, white and thin and feminine.
Right, yeah. Like, you're not embracing, you're embracing traditional gender roles.
Not if you're gonna wear practical shoes that are a little... Exactly.
Yeah, you're just falling...
If you're gonna wear practical shoes that are a little ugly, it's not as good as if you're wearing high heels.
Right.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid.
Which kind of goes back to something we talked about earlier that isn't in this, like, official episode, but we just talked about it today. About the, like, the women in Atlantis. And they all just look so, like, distinct and interesting. And the old lady who's, you know, was born smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Like, we don't think less of her as a person because she's not, like, an idealized woman.
Right.
And we shouldn't. But a lot of the time, I think a lot of people in society do. And it's not going to be helped if we keep thinking that, like, superheroes and spies are only impressive if they do everything wearing, like, latex and high heels.
Yeah. Well, and I think Atlantis has another good example, which is and I don't remember any of their names, but the blonde woman who's in their group. I don't remember, but she's very big. She's very muscular. She's very broad. And, you know, you contrast that with the princess, who's very slender, obviously portrayed like very, like, kind of sexualized a little bit, but, you know, the like bigger blonde character, there's never a scene in the movie where they're like, well, she's, you know, who would want to date her? You know, she's stacked. There's never really a moment where one is, like, compared to the other as more desirable. One is just, like, smaller, one is bigger, and both characters, I would say, are portrayed as, like, very competent, very unique, and very powerful characters. Both women are very, very strong, but for, you know, different reasons, and they're portrayed differently, and that's fine. That's really, really cool that they're able to. And then you have the smaller girl who's the mechanic, and she's just kind of like, she's a tomboy. She's got her big old gloves and her oversized clothes, and she's, you know, snarky and, you know, short but big in her own personality and her own right. Like, it's a really good example of having, you know, a wide variety of different female characters portrayed in different ways. Like, they're not cookie cutter by any means, but they're also not competing. It's just really a phenomenal film.
Yeah, it is.
It's just, and it's so fun too. I'm going to talk about the suspense again, because we don't see any dinosaurs for a majority of like, at least the first half of the movie, I think. They're just not. Like, we know they're there. We just don't see them. And then finally we get the scene with the...
Well, you don't see the... Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's about, I would say maybe a half hour, 45 minutes in, that we see, like, the Brontosaurus. They do move in herds. And you, like, the wonder and the impact there. And that's the perfect first shot for a dinosaur. Even though we have seen the aftermath of a dinosaur right in the very first shot. You know, we don't see the actual creature, but we see exactly what it's doing. It you know, takes a guy's arm.
Right.
But, like, for a moment, the audience itself is caught up in the splendor of the moment, of the park, the majesty of these creatures that we have all talked about and thought about and adored. And all of a sudden, like, boom, they're there. And then we're forced back into reality that these are wild animals and they do not belong here.
Exactly. Like, and it's, as much as it is, like, wonderful and incredible and emotional, it's, again, like, you do have to consider the dangers of what you're doing. And I think this is why, I think I said at the beginning that this is just such, like, a perfect example, quintessential Spielberg film. And part of it is that, right, that he gives a lot of focus to, like, the suspense and the timing of everything. I think not using dinosaurs for, like, the whole movie, but, like, in little snippets and then, like, building up to the big thing. He's focusing a lot on the ideas and, like, the character work. And the dinosaurs are, like, a lot of them are, like, practically built. And so it helps to...
Oh my gosh.
Which is another thing that I want to get into.
Yeah.
We gotta... we'll talk about that. But then also, like... what was I going to say? Just, like, the camera angles, like you say in that shot where they do move in herds and they, like, get out of the Jeep and the people on the screen are this big and the dinosaurs are huge and they fill up the whole, like, you can barely even see their entire bodies even though they're filling up, like, the entire screen, right? So it adds to that idea of, like, wonder and majesty that, like, these are real enormous creatures, like, and they're really here. So I think it that's definitely added to, like, by this kind of style and structure that he was working for. And then again with, like, everything being practical, that's, like, a signature, like, a Spielberg thing.
Yeah.
He's going to use CGI as little as possible. He's going to use practical as much as possible. So I think kind of holding off on the dinosaur things made it easier for those artists to, like, create the dinosaurs and have them function for the whole movie or whatever, because they're not overusing them for every scene. Additionally, the dinosaurs are so awesome, dude. When they're sitting in the Jeep, and the eye is in the window,
And the
freaking pupils dilate. And
Shut
my gosh.
up.
Like,
Shut
it's so convincing.
To this day, and I've seen other people say this,
This was
but this
made-
was in the 80s?
Can I... No, 93.
Okay.
But still, that was 30 years ago.
30 years! And that movie,
Yeah.
still, I'm not entirely convinced that they didn't use real dinosaurs. You watch that.
Yeah.
Especially on, like, I watched it in my theater. They do the showing old classics. So I watched it in the theaters. And it is, I mean, literally out of this world.
Yeah.
It is astounding.
Because even then, like, you're on the big screen, right? So you see the first shot where the people are really little and they're taking up the whole screen. And then again, when you're in the Jeep, and it's, like, claustrophobic.
In the Jeep, or the scene where you see the
Because the
T-Rex.
whole screen is taken up
By the
just
eye.
by the eyeball. And it's, like...
Just the pupil.
So, like, that's so scary. And again, the people are so, like, small and cramped in the space to really, like, accentuate that style. And I think, yeah, he has just a lot of... I did have one more
and
thing.
the scene
just
with,
about
oh, go
his,
ahead.
like... Just his director's perspective in some shots. Like, when they're, like, driving and it's like, objects in mirror, close and they appear. First of all, funny.
Hysterical.
So good. I love his little, like... He's gonna throw a little bit of humor in there with the, like, high-tense, like...
Yeah, we're not gonna, but not
Big
enough to take
danger.
you out of the moment either.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he's right behind me, isn't he? You know, it's like objects in mirror are closer than they appear, and they're, like, already afraid because the dinosaur is getting
right
too
there.
close. Very funny, but very, like, dark humor. And it's just such a, like, creative shot that now is, like, mimicked in other things, namely Toy Story. Funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I feel like it's just such a key insight into, like, what this team was really trying to do. That's my, for now, last thing. If you remember what you were going to say, go ahead.
I do remember, which meant that I wasn't completely listening to what you said, but you can do one
okay.
thing at a time.
You take notes and I'll listen. It's all good.
Exactly. Going back to the practical effects of it, you know, the scene where you see the T-Rex for the first time in full. And, you know, this is after a little bit of, you know, her playing around with the Jeeps and kind of, you see the water cup shake, which is another thing, by the way. Oh my gosh. The
Yeah,
water cup shaking.
So good.
And again, that adds to the magnitude of it, right? Like, enough to make the entire ground boom, boom. So good. Plus, there's no music, and you just have the sound of the rain and the breathing in the car. Like, that build-up is stupendous. It is so
Phenomenal.
good. It is so well done. And then, the delivery after all of that, you see this real, actual T-Rex, this practically made creature, standing and roaring. And just the... It's so good! It's so good! That, like, who has ever done it like that? Have we ever done it like that since? No. And I really
Visually,
admire
like, it's
Spielberg too,
fantastic.
because you have the scene with the, you know, the dinosaurs running across the field and they loop back around. You have that. It's like very pioneered CGI. Very, very way back in the day. And even still, it looks amazing.
It still holds
Yeah.
up. Yeah, it's still very believable.
Yeah, it's a little bit dated, but probably only because I know it was made, you know, 30 years ago. You have movies that are made, and I'm not even going to go down that road because it's going to make me angry, but it does not.
Sometimes movies are made modernly that are bad.
Yeah, and it really shows.
And that's all we're really
That's-
going to say about that.
No, I wasn't.
yeah.
I didn't have anything else in the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shows how much care and passion and time that it takes sometimes to make a movie look good and feel good. And it's the difference between like a real leather jacket and like a faux leather jacket, you know? Like, yeah, they look the same at first, but 30 years down the road, like one of them's still going to be around and one of them is not.
Yeah.
It was the one that was made with, you know, sincerity, authenticity, not the one with artificial materials and made immediately and cheaply. You have to put time into it. The T-Rex broke so many times on set because they were doing it with the water effects. And still, they continued to do it because they said, this is important. Like, first of all, they made the damn, like, thing. So they're going to use it.
Yeah, they're like, you're not going to put so much work into this. And then they're like, well, it doesn't work. Like,
yeah.
Obviously, you want to try as hard as you can to keep using it as long as possible because of the effort they put into it. And also so that it looks the same the whole time. And there's not, like, a weird moment where it's, like, made of CGI and then one where it's, like, made of actual animatronics or whatever.
And they knew how important it would be for the final look.
They're looking for consistency. They're looking for, just holding up, like, being true to the vision that they have, the story they want to tell, and the way they want to tell it. Yeah.
It's so good.
It's awesome.
Oh, one more thing.
The music, obviously, iconic.
Phenomenal. But the one line that I think is probably one of my favorite lines in any movie, but I kind of forget about because it's just kind of low-key. It's when the guy with the rifle.
Clever girl.
Yeah. Clever girl. Yeah. And that's the line he says right before he dies. You know, he's, been so careful. He's tracked her so carefully. And that's all he has right before he's eaten alive is just admiration.
He recognizes that he got. It's like, can't even be mad about it.
Game recognizes game.
Exactly.
And I freaking love that because probably aside from the actual paleontologist, he's probably the only one on the island that actually respects these animals for what they are. And that's amazing because everyone else just has so much, I don't want to say like outright contempt, but just maybe a blatant disregard for, their power and their majesty. And this man does not.
I think so.
He knows full well what
and
he's
it's again
with.
Because they're using them for, first of all, to prove themselves that they can be the best and they can create this thing. And also, like, again, just like not fully recognizing that as even this creature that you like created in a lab is like not yours. It's still a wild animal, right? And you see this in like when people go to Yellowstone and they try to like take a selfie with the elk or whatever. It's like, it's not trained.
Yeah.
It lives here.
Like,
you were taking its space right now. Like, yeah. What if somebody just walked into your house?
And, like, a lot of people show blatant...
Anyway,
like,
just the idea that,
blatantly
like...
aggressive, too. Like, they make direct eye contact. You know, they're big and bold. And you walk up to a bison, like... and you make eye contact with that thing...
Yeah, goodbye.
Yeah, that's like walking. That is literally like walking into someone's home and like just flipping them off. You know, what do you expect?
You like at very best, you're lifetime banned from going to their house. But like they fully have like the right to kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Bison don't have
that's
access
insane.
to like legal authorities.
Yeah, no, and they're I don't think they want to.
No, they thirst for blood.
You know? Yeah. But like, and again, they like the dinosaurs are not malicious, but they're also not like pets, and they're not your, you know, your creation just because you made it, which again is like, goes into like the parenthood thing. First of all, the scientists created the dinosaurs and then like don't expect them to, you know, to be their own autonomous creatures. And then also you know, that definitely parallels with like the respect for children that some characters have more than others. Maybe
that's a good point.
And then just the idea of like, you know how they like create the dinosaurs and they're like, they're all male, don't worry.
Female.
Which again, they didn't do their research. They're all female, don't worry. They've first of all, don't do their research into the like DNA that they're using to, you know, that like, oh, actually some of them can change their gender because we use the DNA of this animal that does that. So that idea of, like, just, yeah, it being outside of your control as much as you want to control it.
Yeah.
Life
Finds a way.
finds a way.
I like Jeff.
Totally
love.
ridiculous.
What
a guy.
I think that's really interesting too, because the Jurassic World movies have completely lost sight of that theme. You know, you have Blue the raptor, who is basically like just kind of a passive aggressive neighbor to Chris Pratt. That's her role. This raptor, a velociraptor, can communicate, and he can communicate with her, and she respects him. That's not how that works. That's
Right.
not how that works.
Where he's like,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
hang
Blue,
on.
I'm gonna
Like, she's
bring your
not a
baby back.
horse.
And she like nods at him. What the hell? What the hell?
yeah, it's
Shut
like,
up.
Like, you're not. It's just so obviously, like, to make a movie and make a profit, and not to, like, actually tell a believable
Right.
story.
And that's where like,
Right. Not that it's, again, like, it's not completely realistic.
but it has to follow the rules.
Because
that
nobody's
it's set
creating
up in
dinosaurs,
its-
but it has
Exactly.
It has its own semblance of truth, and you're like, I believe this because people aren't speaking to the
Right.
raptors
And
treating them like horses,
exactly.
because that doesn't
No,
make any
it doesn't.
sense.
And especially raptors that you haven't trained, like hand raised these babies.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, maybe in
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
one. Like that hand trick barely worked in the first one. I can maybe buy that. Like,
Yeah.
sure. This guy maybe has a little bit more control over these raptors than, any other given person. But by the
And it's only, like, it's barely, and it's only believable because it's, again, he, like, created them and was, like, there when they were
Right,
born
and
or
treated them
whatever.
with some
So it's
level
like
of
how,
respect.
like, a duck or goose would, like, imprint onto the first
right,
thing it
Yeah.
sees. That kind of thing. So you, like, kind of
right.
believe
But by the
it, yeah.
third one, he really is having like full-on conversations with this velociraptor. The hand trick works on any dinosaur that he comes across, and it's frustrating because in the first one, there is no guarantee that any one of them is making it out safely. Even one of the kids, you think like there's a possibility that kid's gonna die because of the fence, not even because of the dinosaurs, but like there is
But there's so many other things because they didn't think it
exactly
through.
there's
They could die in a car accident. They could die because of the
Right.
fence.
any given thing, and there's no guarantee that any of the main characters are safe. You think probably because they're main characters, you probably
Yeah.
assume, but in the story as you're watching it, you're feeling it. You feel the danger that they're in, and the new Jurassic World movies simply do not capture that. Every time they introduce
it's
a new
not just,
character, you're like, yeah, okay, fine, they're there. It's only the bad
Like,
guys who are
whatever,
going to get
right.
eaten to get their comeuppance. No one else.
Right. Like, it shouldn't be obvious that these people are going to win and save the day and have a happy ending because they're in a movie.
Right.
Like, it's a movie. It should be something that, like, anything could happen.
Because dinosaurs are real.
Like, not completely predictable.
So anything
you know
can
what I
happen,
mean?
and you've
Yeah, like, dinosaurs
these
are real.
dinosaurs. You've shown that they're vicious and they're cruel and they're going to eat anybody except for like these 9 people.
Yeah.
Inexplicably,
That's too many people, frankly.
It's too many people. It's too many.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Crazy.
Well,
I'll have you know, I haven't seen Jurassic World and I never will.
yeah. You know my story with
This is
Jurassic
all just
World.
based on this is cultural osmosis that I know so much about it, despite my best efforts. In my mind, there's one dinosaur movie. It's Jurassic Park, 1993.
Yeah,
that's
that's
it.
It's the only one we ever needed. I've never even seen the sequels to Jurassic Park.
That's okay.
Yeah. In my head, they don't exist. In my head, they exist
Yeah,
the same way
that's
Shrek
fine.
3 and 4 exist in the Shrek universe.
Mm-hmm.
They're there, and they are something. But, like, are they really?
Yeah, it's like it's
Yeah,
okay.
Shrek
It's
1 and
not
2 is
like-
an entity to me, and Shrek 3 and 4 are just completely separate. But they're connected. They, legally.
It's like in my example of like Star Wars, how A New Hope didn't need 2 more sequels, but then when now that it has them, it's like yes, perfect. But it like didn't need all the prequels and all the other sequels and all the whatever. You know what I mean? Like when I think of Star Wars, I'm talking about 4, 5, and 6. Maybe Rogue One. Sometimes the prequels, if I'm like in the mood for it, I think they're fun. But that's like Shrek 3 and 4 is the Star Wars
Sure.
prequels. And 4, 5, and 6 is Star Wars.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's what I like and I'm a fan of, you know, because it's a good story, not because it's a big corporation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely done. I think that's it.
Great. Yeah, I think we've done it. Thank you, everyone, namely John,
Shout out to John.
listening to this week's episode of Women in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
Should they?
Eek! Monsters! Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yes.
We haven't picked a topic for next week yet, but probably it will happen.
Drop a comment down below, and in 3 years, we'll do that.